What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in. Today I want to demonstrate how to design and publish a website without using any code. As you can see right now, we're inside of Photoshop, and I designed this layout, and I'm going to show you guys how to design this layout in just a minute. And once my layout is complete, I edit my layers and get them prepared for export. After that, I simply go into the WebZ software I downloaded and click a build button, and the software will convert this Photoshop file into CSS and HTML. Once the software is done, you get a folder of files, the main one being the index file. Click on it, it comes up in the browser, and it shows you how your website would look if you were to publish it onto the internet. Yes, the site is responsive. You can opt not to make the website responsive by just clicking this. It won't become responsive. But one issue I found, if you're using a smaller text, the text reduces to a hard to read size, and that's a really simple fix. It's a few different ways you can do this actually. One way is to go into the CSS style sheet, if you're familiar with CSS, and edit the responsive section of that style sheet. I got in contact with WebZ, and they were saying using an icon. A lot of websites actually do this on their mobile view. You get that icon that you click on, and then their menu kind of drops down onto the screen. You can use that. I personally opt not to use the responsive option simply because I like having complete control of the screen at all times, even if you're on a phone. So I myself create a mobile web page, a smaller web page than the normal 1366 that I'll usually use. I think this is a 600 pixel width, but we'll talk about that later on. I create that mobile view, and then I use JavaScript to detect if the user is using a desktop or if they're using a mobile phone or a tablet. And I'll blog about that on Starting Site, so you guys can, if you opt to go that route, I'm going to have a blog about doing that. It's a simple line of code. You just copy and put it into your header section, and JavaScript does the work. It just finds out if the user is using a mobile phone or if they're using a regular desktop, and then it will direct them to that proper web page. So speaking of creating more web pages, one concern a person might have is that, you know, when you're using like a WordPress theme, you get this management system with that theme. Even though you're sacrificing, you know, customization options, you get a system that you don't have to keep creating additional Photoshop files, and that's a valid argument. Even though creating these Photoshop files, it's not work. You know, it's not coding. It's not, you know, the regular task of creating a web page. But I understand why somebody would argue, hey, you know, editing multiple pages at once that look exactly like this, you know, is something you can do in WordPress, and that's something that a lot of people want to be able to do. And I created a dashboard coded in PHP and MySQLi. And if you want to download this dashboard, just simply go to startingsites.com/dashboard. But what you can do with this dashboard is create pages, create files. You know, I got a contact form, and I got a video for this dashboard, and we're gonna talk about how to use it and how to install it onto your website. So that's a solution I've provided for people who don't want to have to continually make Photoshop files. And the dashboard is really good editing pages on the go and creating pages on the go and things like that. But like I said, I'll get into that in the dashboard video. So let's get started. Let's close all these old windows out and start a new document. I always use a 1366 pixel width because that is a very common screen resolution. once you create your file, you can adjust the height and the width. So let's use a 650 pixel height, and that should take up the entire browser. I don't think Cable Cuts does that anymore, but when I first created Cable Cuts, I just used a 650 pixel height design, and this scroll bar wouldn't be here. And just like with the 1366 pixel wide setting, the scroll bar at the bottom disappears. Now, of course, this wouldn't be the case for every screen, but as I said, 1366 is very popular. So lastly, we just make sure our background contents are set to transparent and our aspect ratio is square pixels. I will try my best to explain how Photoshop works, but just keep in mind that there are thousands of videos online dedicated to instructing people on how to use this software. The first thing we need to do is make sure our colors are set properly. My background is going from a white color to a gray color using the gradient tool. So we just need to make sure that the gradient tool is set to reverse, since we have gray as our foreground and white as our background. And just click, drag down. It's not going to be perfect. As I said, I don't want to get into explaining the software too much. Now I will rename this layer by double clicking BG. Quick tip for exporting: we do not want any of our layers to be named the same. Next, I'll click the shape tool and just create my borders. 50 pixels by 366. Easy way to adjust by pixel is just to go into properties and type it in. Let's change the color of that shape. So let's go to the site. Things on the website will look larger because in Photoshop we're only at 66.7%. We can use Photoshop to enhance very bare images like the one we see on our design at the very top by just going back to layers and right click, and we'll head into blending options. The first thing we can do is add a horizontal gradient effect to this top border. So let's go and click the gradient overlay. Let's change the color. And I think I used the reflected and just scaled it in. No, it at 0. There we go. You can kind of see kind of like a spotlight shining in the middle of that image. And another thing I did was added a shadow. So drop shadow. That's not bad. It can't be darker because it's already black, so I think the opacity needs to come up. We'll have more of a shadow at the bottom of that image. So we'll do 65% once again. We'll just hit OK. We'll rename that layer to top. Then we'll just duplicate it and name the copy bottom. Make sure bottom is highlighted. Move tool, drag it down to the bottom. As you can see, Photoshop has these guys that make sure everything is aligned the way we want them to be aligned. If you look closely, you'll see that we lost our shadow on the bottom layer. We didn't lose it, it's just at the bottom of our layer, and we can't rotate the layer because that effect wouldn't rotate with the image. So let's go back into drop shadow and changing the angle wouldn't work. So the easiest thing to do is just to make the shadow go around the entire layer by making the distance 0. We'll have to increase the size. See 15, you see the shadow starting to show up. We can increase the spread. That'll make it darker for us. We'll set that to 20. Hit OK. Now we can add a layer between top and bottom. We'll just name it logo. This will be a text layer. We can make things easier as far as where to position them by just adding some guides. So new guide 203, and we'll do another guide at 1163, and this will give us 960 pixels, which is really common. Most websites will focus most of their content in the center and just use 960 pixels of that browser. Put our logo right where that guide starts. It doesn't need to be that big. So we'll say 200 by 25. Type in the name of our website. Give us some more space. Go into properties, and you gotta back out of that layer first. Go into properties and kind of edit it there. 30 pixels. Go back to the text, make it larger. Just go 30. And I want to change the color to black. And add some effects to this text. So right click, blending options. I want to add a bevel effect. It's actually not bad. I think I want to decrease the depth. $80 should work. Let's also add a little shadow. All the way around by keeping distance at 0. And let's do 5 for each. Close this out. And getting the logo to be centered inside of our top border is really simple. Hold Shift, click top, go up to the layer tab and click on the align option, and we'll just say we want to vertical center our logo layer. For the menu, we'll just use 5 different text layers right after logo. We'll just add 5 layers right now, and we'll name them home. Let's click the text tool. Let's change our color to white and our size to, let's say 12. Now we'll shift click home and highlight all of our tabs, and we just put them in a folder called menu. I'll opt not to use any effects on these tabs, because if we use effects, when it's time to export our file, those layers will be exported as images, whereas if we don't use effects, they're just going to be exported as text, and we can edit that text once our site is live online without coming back to Photoshop, change it in Photoshop, and then exporting it all over again. So we'll just keep them as regular text layers, so once they're exported, we can change them as much as we want. I like to call this next section the money spot, because this is typically where people's eyes are drawn to once they come to your website. It's usually a video or some type of slideshow I embedded on cable cuts. You see I have, and I put links to different blogs because blogging is where all of my profits come from. So naturally I'm going to tailor my design towards, what works for me. Back to Photoshop. We've already covered how to insert text, so I'm going to show you how to embed a YouTube video. And the standard size for a video, I believe, is 560 by 315. So we'll do a new layer, shape tool. We'll adjust it in the properties section. 560 by 315. We'll make it black. And just move it. Let Photoshop center it for us. Here we go. And we'll create another layer, the same size, but this time it will just be a text layer. And this is where we'll copy and paste our embed code we'll get from YouTube. Once we've exported it, give ourselves a note saying, we'll say YouTube video, make it larger for video purposes. We'll center it. Let's give it some spacing, 30. Line breaks. So we'll name the text layer YouTube. We'll just leave it at YouTube video, and the shape will be UBG. Now we can shift click, add this into a folder named YouTube, and we can move both of them simultaneously. Before we add our products, let's just create a new layer, text layer down here for our startingsites.com link. We actually have to get above bottom so we can display that, and we'll say size of 16, put powered by startingsites.com. Shift click bottom, layer tab, and we want to once again align it vertical center. Our text layer is too big, so we need to make the text layer the same size as the actual text. We do that by going into properties and making that layer 16 pixels. Just do 390. All right, shift click once again, layer line, vertical center, as well as layer line, horizontal center. Now we can add our products in. So I just did some simple math, and I divided the 960 pixels we used when spacing these guides out into 4, and I subtracted 8 pixels for spacing 3 times, which leaves us with a div the size of 234 pixels. So we'll create a new folder and just work inside of this folder. We'll add a layer for the box, a layer for the box hover, and a layer for the product name. We don't have to add a layer for the image of the product because we're going to import those images into this document. So we'll just name these layers. The first thing we'll do is create the box, just a shape tool. As I said, it's 234 pixels wide and 200 pixels is what we use for the height. And properties. We'll move it up a bit. We'll change the color. Just make it a darker gray. Not too dark. That'll work. And then we'll move the opacity down. That way it gets a transparent look. Let's say 50%. We can save time by deleting this box hover layer and duplicating the box layer so we won't have to do all that over again. And it will get lighter once we hover over it, so the box hover will have even less opacity. So we'll say 35%. We'll do a text layer for the product name itself. Just take up that entire 234. Do a height of 15. Leave it at 18. And we'll type in, say, Amazon for the Fire Stick. Change our text color. We'll just use a dark gray. It doesn't need to be centered, and it needs to be on top of these boxes. We'll just drag it up. Do some styling to the text. Make it black. Actually can be 18. Just add TV to it. We'll just duplicate it 3 times. Can change the product names for the ones that aren't Amazon. So I'll rename everything off screen. None of my layers have the same name anymore. Now we can bring over our images. We want our image in between the box and the box hover, so the image will light up as well. So we'll just click on where we want our image to be placed, and we'll go and grab it. Now I'll just prepare my Photoshop file for export by labeling each div. First, we need a # for every layer we want exported. I'm not going to label the background. I'll just shift and go up to the top and click the very last layer so we can highlight everything, and I'll put that into a folder I'll name main, and I'll put a # in front of that folder. I'm also going to align this entire folder center. This will align our website in case the screen resolution is larger than 1366. We want to have the website in the center of that screen. So we put align equals and we'll put center in between the quotation marks. Another thing we need to do is create links, and I'll just do the menu, or I'll just do two. There's two different ways you can create links. Now we do href equals two quotation marks, and then we'll put the destination we want that link to lead to. So we can either do http:/link name, I'll say starting sites, or we can put the www dot in that destination as well. We must also rasterize the images we have effects on, and as I said before, this will make these images no longer editable. So we'll just rasterize the 3 layers that has effects. And just a quick tip, if it doesn't have the pound in the front, you won't be able to edit them either. So one last thing, and that's to make the layer with the hover lowercase, box 4, and you put a colon and put hover. And as I said, these layers need to have the same name, so we'll just copy and paste, and we'll do that for each product folder.